Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello! Yeah. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
My dad was in the Navy. He was a sailor. And so we moved every 3 years all around the world.
Were you into wars, well, into history? Did you read a lot of books?
Yeah, I was really interested in history. So I read a lot of history books.
When was the first time you found out about Second World War?
Probably when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Did your father, and when did you ask your father about war?
Well, he was in the Navy. He was in the Battle of the Coral Sea in the Pacific. Some of his friends were over the house and they were talking, and then he explained to me what happened. We also had a lot of books about World War II around our house.
What did he tell you about the sinking of the battleship?
Well, the Lexington was an aircraft carrier. They found the Japanese fleet, and the planes were dive bombing on the aircraft carrier, and it started fires, and they couldn't put the fires out, so they had to abandon ship, and then a U.S. ship came in and sank it.
Were you into rock and roll? What was on your stereo when you were 16?
Oh, Beach Boys.
And where did you live?
We lived in Coos Bay, Oregon, and then we moved to Yokohama, Japan.
Sounds. So you speak Japanese?
No.
So you went to American school there?
Yeah, American high school.
And what made you go to the army now?
I was in college and I didn't like it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had been a merchant sailor for a while, and I wanted to go back to sea as a merchant sailor. And I talked to my father about it. He said, if you do that, you will never go back to college. And he was right. I'd have stayed in the Merchant Mariners. So I said, okay, I'm going to join the U.S. Marine Corps. He said, if you join the Marine Corps, they're going to take us both to the hospital to take my foot out of your ass. He did not like Marines. And so I thought, okay. And then he said, you have a pilot's license already. Why don't you go ahead in the Army and become a helicopter pilot? And that's the reason I joined the Army.
So did you get the draft, or did you join just to save lives and help out, or for the adventure?
Yeah, I joined up. I wasn't drafted.
Did you go over to save lives or for your dad?
Yeah, I went over to do the job of saving people.
You arrived in 68.
I joined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined in 68, and our training took us 1 year. So it was February of 69 when I got to Vietnam.
Did you have training like Full Metal Jackets, like as you see in Hollywood? How was training?
Training was nothing like Full Metal Jacket. You got to be careful with Hollywood, the way they've displayed the war. Apocalypse Now and Deer Hunter, they are just fantasy movies.
But he was in Vietnam himself. The director Oliver,
well,
the man who directed Apocalypse Now and Deer Hunter, he was in Vietnam as well.
Well, if he was in a very different part than I was, because all the guys I talked to, they all thought those two movies were terrible.
And what about Platoon?
They didn't actually portray what we went through. Platoon, we were soldiers once young. We were soldiers once and young. And Hamburger Hill. Those three movies are an accurate description.
So you arrived at the air base. what was going on there? Was it quite busy, or did you sit around? Did you have a casino there? Was there a field hospital and offices, or what did you do the first?
Well, the place I arrived at, where my unit was stationed, was a place called Laike, Laikhe, and we lived in tents. Initially we had no buildings to live in. We lived in what's called a GP medium tent, and there would be 6 guys in each tent. We had no running water, no air conditioning. We had electricity. We had a runway. And there was 2 other helicopter units there as well. And then there was a village right next to where the base was at. And that was about it. There was no, we took one of the tents and we made a little officers club out of it. And another tent was for the enlisted men, for their club. And we had no TVs. We could get radio from AFN.
What was on the radio?
Oh, Beach Boys, all kinds of music that they were playing back in the States. It was just like a regular radio station, and it was run by the Army. I'm trying to think of there was a movie about one of the broadcasters.
Good Morning Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam. Yeah. And that was the radio station we all listened to.
You were involved in a very bad air battle in a very bad situation in Vietnam, no?
Well, if you were a helicopter pilot, you were in an air battle just about every day. We would get woken up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would get our mission an hour later. And some of us would go out together, some of us would go out by ourselves. And the missions could be anything from flying VIPs around to flying troops around in a combat assault to resupply. Yeah.
What do you mean by VIPs?
Very important people.
Yeah, but who in the Vietnam War was a very important person? Was that your colonel or?
No, the colonel had his own aircraft. The division commander, the generals, they had their own aircraft. VIP would be, I flew around Harry Reasoner. Harry Reasoner was a very famous journalist reporter in the United States in the 60s. And I flew him around for 2 days. Some movie stars, they would come over and visit the troops. You might have to fly them around for the day. So those were considered VIPs.
Did you fly medics? Did you go and pick up wounded?
Normally only a medevac aircraft or dust-off aircraft would pick up the wounded. I was in an assault helicopter company, and normally we didn't pick them up. Now, if we were right there and they were wounded and the battle was going on, yes, we would take them. We'd take them back to a base or a fire base and get them out of there. But normally, no, we did not pick up the wounded. We did, however, pick up the dead. Medevac and dust-off would not pick up the dead, so we were tasked to do that.
And how come your father did join you as your shooter?
He came over. I had been there for 6 months when he was assigned to Vietnam, and he worked down at the big headquarters building in Saigon, about 100 miles away from where I was. So I asked my company commander if my dad could come up and visit, and my company commander said, sure, have him come up. So I flew down there to Saigon and picked him up and brought him up to our unit. And then I asked the commander. The commander just said, hey, if you want your dad to fly with you, it's okay by me. So Dad jumped in behind the machine gun and flew as my gunner several times.
What did he stay in your camp?
Yes, he stayed there in our tent.
What exactly happened there in Lamson?
Oh, Lamson 719. That was a major battle that took place from 8 February to 15 April. The South Vietnamese conducted a ground attack with 3 divisions from Khe Sanh across the border into Laos to the town of Chapon, Laos. The United States provided all the helicopters to support that operation. Without US helicopters, that operation would never have started. When we crossed over, the first 2 days, we had only a few aircraft shot up. The North Vietnamese did not expect us, or if they did, they weren't ready for us. But after the second day, they were ready for us. And there was only a few landing zones that we could use, and they had each one of those landing zones surrounded by anti-aircraft guns. So whenever you went into a place or out of a place, you were taking fire. And in that 45-day period, we had 600 helicopters shot down. We had 108 crew members killed. We had 1,200 crew members wounded. And 11 crew members are still missing today.
Did you leave Vietnam in between your stay?
I left. Oh, okay, I see. I left Vietnam at the end of my first year, came back to the United States for 30 days, and then went back to Vietnam.
But you did you stay at that Big Hill air base on this hill, which was then on this big hill where there was 70 days of air battle. That was 60.
You mean at Khe Sanh?
Yeah.
Oh no, we stayed at a place called Dong Ha.
Okay. But did you always know what was going on around? Did you know about what happened in Khe Sanh at that time?
Oh yeah, because every day we had to go to Khe Sanh. So yes, we knew what was going on around there.
Were you able? But there were so every day at that time there were 6 B-52 bombers dropping a lot of bombs around
Yes.
that hill. No.
Yes.
Did you ever see a tiger there? When, after your mission in Vietnam, when you came home, did you feel like under adrenaline all the time?
No, because when I came home, I stayed in the Army. And everybody around me, where I lived on the base, we socialized with other soldiers. So all of us had the same experience. And so we never thought about PTSD. In fact, we didn't even know what PTSD was. And so we had no anxiety, no depression. I mean, we were doing our jobs. We were having a great time in our lives then because we were soldiers. But we never did think about Vietnam as far as, it depressed me or gave me anxiety. That only happened many years later.
When did I reckon then your kids grew up moving around the country as well, no?
Yes, they moved with us every 3 years.
They probably grew more up with documentaries about the Second World War and even the Vietnam War. Did you tell them a lot about war? Did you have lots of talks with them?
Well, we didn't. The boys, they studied history. They know all about World War II. They have walked. When we lived in Germany, I think they must have walked every bit of the Battle of Market Garden. And we went down to Normandy and the Ardennes. So they were very familiar with growing up with the war in Europe. Not so much Vietnam. I didn't talk about Vietnam very much with them.
And you said it was really bad when you tried to convince them not to go to war.
Yeah, the boys, I tried to convince them to go do something else. I wanted them to go be lawyers, but they had their mindset that they were going to be soldiers, so that's what they did.
And they are aware that that you have PTSD.
Yeah, they are now. Yes.
Did you check out? You said that in the therapy, do you just there? What do you do there? It's just a talk therapy, no?
Yeah, it's cognitive therapy. The first part of it was 11 weeks in group, and in group, you didn't so much talk about your situation, but the instructor went over different phases of PTSD, different therapy programs and stuff like that. And then at the end of the 11 weeks, then you decided which program you wanted to take. And so I chose cognitive. And so I met with the psychologist, and we meet once a week. And we started going through a process to get to the root cause of my PTSD. And then at about I'd say about the 8th week, we broke the code on what my problem was. And then after that, it was a matter of ensuring that if I was starting to feel anxiety and depression, how I'd overcome that. Now we meet maybe once every 6 weeks.
Do you think you're just unlucky?
Was I unlucky?
Yeah, in your soul for how to say, to have gotten PTSD. I don't know if you read the interviews, no? The other interviews I already made.
No, I don't think I was unlucky. It's something that just happened in life. So be it.
And you said that you had a blast trauma. How did this happen?
Have a what?
TBI.
TBI.
In war, in blast trauma.
Oh, yeah. I was in a training accident, and an explosion went off right next to me, and it detached a retina in my eye. And so they've never been able to fix that.
When you got home from Vietnam, how did you receive the protests? How was this?
When I came home the first time, I arrived in Seattle. I went out that night with a young lady, and I was wearing my uniform. And we went to a dance club, and nobody said a thing. No, I didn't see any protesters, nothing. I mean, it was like I was wearing civilian clothes and nobody knew me. When I came home the second time, about the same thing. I never did really see protesters. Now,
really?
Yeah, you had, yeah.
But you must have heard it on the radio, even in Vietnam, about the student riots and people dying, at the New York Times saying what happened in Miley was just a bit like Leningrad.
Well, you had pockets. San Francisco was crazy with demonstrators. But if you didn't have a uniform on, they didn't know who you were. So nobody bothered you. Los Angeles, a lot of protesters. New York City, you're going to have a bunch of protesters for everything and anything. So you have pockets of protesters back then, and it was different universities had different pockets of protesters. Where I went to school in '74, the protesters were all in the math department. In other places, they were in the English department. So you had different pockets of protesters, and they can protest all they want. It's it's what we do in America, like we've got going on right now. So I just never got bothered by them. Never interacted with.
You went to the first Gulf War then.
Yes.
After my Millie and I guess the cruelties of war are maybe bad. You wrote me you experienced bad decision makings of your boss, and you were able to not take them, or sometimes, or yeah, that's what you wrote. How was that? Was it just too busy to not to? Because we in Germany and Ireland and Germany has the soldier law that says that you must not follow unlawful laws, and that you can't go to jail for that.
Yeah, we have the same thing. A soldier has a duty to obey orders, but he also has a moral duty to obey orders that are just. In Vietnam, I got an order one night. I was flying a mission called Night Hunter Killer, and we would fly out with 2 helicopters. I was the lower helicopter. I was right on top of the trees, and another helicopter, a gunship, was way above me. And if I found a target, I would engage that target, and then the gunship would back me up. Well, I found we were in Cambodia, and I found a village that had people standing out in the middle of the village. And so I called it in and said, hey, I've got a village, we got people. And I received the order, shoot them all. And I said, no, I'm not going to shoot them. Nobody's shooting at me. These are indigenous Montagnard villagers. We're not shooting them. And so we had a little discussion about that. And I said, well, if you want to charge me when we get back in, here's my name, rank, and social security number. Go ahead and charge me. Nothing ever came of it because I knew it was an unlawful order. So unlawful orders, soldiers should disobey them. The question comes down, are you sure it's an unlawful order? And that's where people get themselves in trouble sometimes. What they think is an unlawful order, in fact, is a lawful order. And got to make a decision.
Do you know, I did interview this Irish ex-major. He tried to arrest George Bush in Limerick on the airport because the Gulf War was unrightful under the international conventions. Did you read the interview I made with him?
No, I didn't, but that's kind of stupid. You're a major in the Army, and you're going to try to arrest the President of the United States when he's been invited to your country by your president. What he was trying to arrest were people that had so much authority so far above him that it'd been ridiculous for him to even try that. So, and if it was a case of a violation of international law, I'm sure that Mr. Bush probably did not do that, or anyway, it was somehow explained away. But as a major, that's a pretty dumb move.
He's involved in an U.S. American organization called Boots for Freedom. So with after things like that happened in Vietnam, did you get more critical or on international politics or decisions from the US?
No, soldiers should not get involved in politics. When you're a soldier, at least in the American Army, you make a pledge and says that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Follow the orders of those appointed above me by the President of the United States. So you stay out of politics when you're a soldier. Now, I'm retired. I don't wear a uniform anymore. So I do get involved in politics. I do voice my opinion about what's going on. But when you're a soldier, you stay out of politics. That's not the place for you to be.
So you can do that even if your kids are now in overseas?
Oh, yes. My oldest son and I do not see eye to eye politically at all. And in fact, we don't talk politics. So we want to keep peace in the family. And so my oldest son and I, we do not talk politics. I don't talk politics with my sister. My youngest son, he thinks like I do in politics, but we don't talk politics with my older son.
Your youngest son is in the defense force, no? And
both my sons were soldiers. My youngest son retired 2 years ago, and now he works in the Pentagon as a civilian. And my oldest son, he is still on active duty. He's in NATO headquarters in Brussels.
You said that you met a paratrooper in Germany who was in the Second World War, and you discussed paratroops.
Yes.
What did he tell you, or what situation did you discuss? Did you discuss strategies?
Well, he was today, or at least then, he was a farmer in Celle, outside of Celle. Had a very nice 1,200-acre farm out there. And in World War II, he became a paratrooper, a Fallschirmjäger, and was a Fallschirmjäger throughout the war. He was taken prisoner towards the end of the war by the United States. So he was thankful that he was taken prisoner and by U.S. forces and not by Russian forces. He still had his youth dagger and still had his a uniform and a rifle from those days, and he kept them hidden in a closet in his house. He only showed them to me after we had 3 or 4 good drinks, and he realized that I respected him as a soldier. Politics, I didn't care about him, but he was a soldier and he did the duty as he saw fit at that time. And we talked a lot about German airborne techniques, which were very, very different from American airborne techniques. And we talked about the different battles and how he saw it as opposed to what I had learned that our guys saw, because I was a paratrooper as well. And so although I had not fought in World War II, I had studied it extensively on the different tactics and the techniques that were used. We had good discussions.
In Vietnam, did you work with the 80 army, the Vietnamese army on your
Yes.
base?
Yes. We would support the 5th ARVN division a lot of times, and we'd fly them in and we'd pick them up. The first two assaults that we did on May 1st, 1970 into Cambodia, we were carrying Vietnamese soldiers. And then in Lam Son 719, that's all we carried was Vietnamese. No American soldiers were allowed to go into Laos. So it was all Vietnamese.
Did you drop napalm?
Napalm?
Yeah.
No, helicopters did not drop napalm.
But did you ever get ill or feel something?
I got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took malaria pills, and usually you take malaria pills. We'd always take them on Mondays, and there were 2 kinds of malaria pills. One helicopter pilots could take, the other one pilots could not take because it affected our night vision. So most helicopter pilots got sick with some malaria.
Did you get to drink alcohol over there, or?
Oh yes. We got to drink beer. Some places they had all kinds of alcohol. The best we could do where we were at was get beer. Sometimes we could get some vodka. Sometimes we could get some red wine, but that was about it. If you're working with special forces, you could get scotch.
And did you have to hunger? Did you ever have bad problems with getting food?
No, we were fed pretty good. In fact, we ate better in Vietnam than we did in Desert Storm. In Vietnam, you always had hot chow for breakfast, sea rations for lunch, and then usually there was hot chow for dinner as well. Now, you didn't get a lot of variety. We used to eat a lot of roast beef. Roast beef for breakfast, roast beef for lunch, roast beef for dinner. But no, the food, we had, American soldiers ate good in Vietnam. It was not a problem.
I can't believe that when you got home from war that you didn't have to, from Vietnam, that you didn't have to tell everybody what happened.
No, people weren't interested. So if they didn't ask, we didn't bring it up.
You said that Vietnam was a war and Iraq not so much for you. Why?
Oh yeah. Iraq was. I was on training exercises that were more difficult than Desert Storm.
What did you do in Desert Storm? You just sat on a base and then you got your call and you were in the air for 1 hour a day?
No, we got there for Desert Storm. We were on a base for about 2 weeks. And then we went out into the desert and took up a position in the desert about 60 miles from the Iraqi border. And we stayed there. We slept in foxholes. We got to shower. We got cold water so we could take a shower if we wanted to. And we stayed there for a month. And then they would bring us back to the base and we'd stay 2 weeks at the base. And then we'd go back out to that same position and stay there for another month. And back to the base for 2 weeks and back out to the position. But when we're in the position, we slept on the ground or in a foxhole. I would sleep wherever I stopped my vehicle at night and just sleep on the ground.
But not alone.
But what?
But not alone. How many were in your company?
I had a battalion. I had 5 companies. And so I had about 800 soldiers.
I did also interview a German soldier who was in Afghanistan, and he saw lots of soldiers committing suicide. Did the Americans have lots of suicides?
We didn't have any suicides in Desert Storm. I'm not aware of any suicides in Iraq or Afghanistan. Our problem is that a veteran gets back here, gets out, gets disassociated from anybody that's been in the military, and then starts having PTSD problems, employment problems, family problems, and so they have a suicide problem with veterans. I think the last number I saw, I think there's probably, and I want to say, I think they're averaging right now about 20 suicides a day across the United States with veterans that have got PTSD.
But not overseas.
No, you very, very seldom have you ever seen a suicide overseas.
Did your psychologist talk with you about what you're gonna do next? Like about
what we're doing? Well, yes. I guess you could say we are in remission. Right now, it's a matter of not actively doing something. It's a matter of avoiding situations and identifying situations that are going to cause problems, and knowing what to do. And when I get in one of those situations.
What did they tell you about Gulf War syndrome?
About what, Frank?
Gulf War syndrome.
Oh, the Gulf War syndrome?
Yeah.
Nothing, because I wasn't interested in it. I haven't seen it. Now, I was concerned about my youngest son because he was in Afghanistan on day 1 that we went into Afghanistan. And then he was in Iraq as well. He was infantry company commander, and he saw a lot of bad things. And so I was always concerned about him and what effect it had on him. And I finally talked him into going seeing somebody. And they said, well, yeah, but you don't have PTSD. But be conscious that if you start having these problems, you need to get back in here and see us. You know, they talk about the Gulf War syndrome. To be honest, I used to think that PTSD was a lot of BS, that it was a hoax.
But what did they tell you? That what was that for you? In the public, the people who had problems with drugs, or sad people, or aggressive people. Cousin was in Gulf War II as a Marine, and he got really angry afterwards.
Well,
he got anger problems.
Yes, and recognize in World War II, we didn't know anything about PTSD. There were the symptoms out there. There were people displaying the symptoms of PTSD, but we never identified it as post-traumatic stress syndrome. And we had the same thing here in the States. These guys came back from World War II and they started drinking heavily. And we all just said, well, they're just alcoholics. We had guys come back that were stressing out, having family problems. Well, they just got family problems. They just, but we never identified it as PTSD. And then when the guys came back from Vietnam, oh, they're just drug addicts. They just became druggies while they're over there. Again, we never identified it as PTSD. And it wasn't until the beginning of the 70s and the early 80s that we started calling this thing post-traumatic stress disorder. And people started saying, well, and I was one of them. I was going, you know, that's a hoax, because people are saying, well, I've got PTSD because they can get more money from the government. And the more I learned about PTSD, I come to recognize that no, PTSD is a real problem, and it's a real genuine disorder that needs to be addressed. But it took me a long time to be convinced that PTSD was really a factor. I used to write it off that people were just weak-minded or just didn't have the fortitude to face life.
No, it's just funny because it's been, I mean, there have been cruelties in every war. No, I mean, you somehow, you know, you kind of know that you're going to war, and yeah.
Well, something that the military did that, and I did it as a battalion commander, that made a big change. In Vietnam, in the early days, the early 60s, when you had somebody killed in the unit, you would have a party that night. You break out the bar, you'd get everybody drunk, you'd toast to the guy, and that was it. And if you were in a unit area, if you were out in the bush, you didn't even do that. Oh, Bob got killed and put on a helicopter today. Sorry about that, Bob. And then they were encouraged, all right, let's get some revenge for Bob. And when you start talking about getting revenge in war, then you start getting into the My Lai massacre and stuff like that. So we didn't treat death on the battlefield very well. If you look at ancient history, the Romans, Troy, the Greeks, after a battle, or even during a battle, after it was over, they'd take a truce. They'd police up the dead, and they had the funeral fires for them, and they honored the dead, and everybody would be there, and they'd understood why they were there. We didn't do that in Vietnam. Now, in Desert Storm, etc., if we had somebody killed in the unit, we would pull back, and when it was possible, we'd have a full-blown ceremony for that individual. We went back to doing what the Greeks and the Romans are doing, and it made people process those individuals' death much better, so that it didn't eat at them after they came back to the States. It helped reduce the internal feelings of, well, I made it and he didn't, and I should feel guilty. We don't get much of that anymore because of the way we handle it now.
Yeah, I saw a documentary today about what soldiers do, and it addresses the job and the perceived or not perceived moral orders or war crimes in the Second World War compared to Vietnam and Afghanistan. And yeah, I reckon it's just happens in every war.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Did you check out the German YouTube, the news?
No, I did not. I did not have a chance to look at that.
What did you do in
that,
Alaska?
I thought that the interview you did with the doctor from Dresden University, the app that she's developing, I thought that was very interesting. In fact, I told my psychologist and my psychiatrist both. I gave them that your website there, and they both are looking at it. Oh yeah, I would talk to anybody about war, about what they did in combat and how they handle situations and stuff like that. I was an instructor. Well, when I was in Germany, I was at the Taktikszentrum des Heeres, and it was me and 11 German officers, and we would sit down and discuss military operations all the time. And then I was an instructor at the Command and General Staff College in Leavenworth. We had many foreign officers there that we would discuss different situations. Some of them were very fascinating, guys that were soldiers from African countries, and hearing how they did some operations and stuff. And the Israelis, I studied one of their exercises, Entebbe raid, in detail, and had a chance to talk to them about the Entebbe raid. So yeah, there's a certain camaraderie with military personnel, regardless of what country you're from. We're all professionals. We all like to sit down and pick each other's brains. I had a chance to sit down and talk to some Russian officers when I was there in Germany, and people thought, well, that's pretty damn strange. They're your enemy. No, they're Russian officers, and our countries didn't see eye to eye, but as soldiers, we were interested in what each other did in our jobs and how we did it. And so yeah, I would talk to foreign officers all the time.
Were you there in Germany as an attaché?
No, I was there as an instructor.
What did you as a helicopter instructor?
Nope, as a tactics instructor. Germany has an office called the Taktikszentrum des Heeres, the Tactics Center of the Army.
Okay.
It was in Hanover at the time. Now it's in Dresden. And this is an office that, at that time, we had myself and 11 German officers. And we would write every year, at that time, the Chief of Staff, the Heeresamt of the German Army, would have an exercise. And he would bring in the corps commanders and the division commanders, and the group, the Taktikszentrum group, we would write that exercise. And then we would present the exercise over a 3 or 4 day period, and the corps commander and the division commanders would get up and present how they would solve different problems in that exercise. And that's what we did. It took us a year to write each one of those exercises. It was fascinating. I brought the piece to the exercise of interoperability issues. All right, Corps Commander, you've got an American Corps on your flank, and here's what you got to do. How are you two going to operate when you speak different languages, you got different equipment, and different tactics? So how are you guys going to do this? And that's how we would. That was my role, was to play the role of the American tactics in there. Very interesting.
You're into, did you read the International Conflict Resolution Reader? When you look back on the Vietnam War, I find it really strange that you put that somebody would put this airbase anyhow on a hill.
Well, you always tried in Vietnam to take the top of the hill. And the reason you wanted the top of the hill is if you were in the bottom in the valley and somebody was on top of the hill, they could see you and shoot at you.
Yeah, but was the North Vietnamese air defense so bad?
Oh no, North Vietnamese air defense is very good.
Yeah,
And-
but then you would sit on a hill and you don't have any protection at all.
No, but what you worried about, if you're on top of the hill, nobody can shoot down at you. And if you're on top of the hill, when they tried to attack you, they would have to come up the hill, very tiring. And you could see them and you could shoot down at them.
But they don't have planes.
They didn't have any planes, no.
Did you ever go to it into a tunnel?
The tunnels of Cu Chi?
Yeah.
No. You could not get me. You could not pay me enough to be a tunnel rat. And that's what we call those guys that would get in the tunnels. They were called tunnel rats. You had to be a very little guy. Most Americans are too big to get in those tunnels. And the tunnels were very dangerous. No, I would not get in a tunnel.
Did you ever go back to Vietnam?
No.
Cambodia?
No, I would go back if it wasn't such a long plane ride. My limit is 7 hours on a plane. I just don't like to stay on planes longer than that.
Do you eat Vietnamese?
Do I eat Vietnamese?
Yeah, do you have or have Vietnamese mates or?
Yeah, I like Vietnamese food.
And people?
Yeah, I like Vietnamese people. Vietnamese people were very nice, very polite, even if they were trying to kill you. But today the Vietnamese people, they're very nice people. North Vietnamese, there is no North and South Vietnam anymore. It's just Vietnam. And I have communicated with some people over there. They're very hospitable. They're very polite people. And in fact, I'm very happy to see how well Vietnam has done since the war. Major improvements. It's a thriving country. We've got good relations with them now. They want us, in fact, the relations, and they fear China so much that they would like us to come back and open up the base at Cam Bay. They're very worried about China trying to overrun
but
them.
how could a republic, the Republic of Vietnam, turn into such a regime?
Well, it got taken over by the North, and they opened up these re-education camps. And I know I've got a friend here. He spent 7 years in one of those re-education camps. So
what year?
What?
What year?
He went in 1976, and he got out in 1984, 85. And once they released him from the re-education camp, he was able to come to the United States.
What does re-education mean?
It means that if you don't like the way I think, we're gonna put you in this camp, and we're gonna re-educate you to think that communism is really the right way to.
What critics do you have now on American politics?
Oh, you really don't want me to start on that one. Let's put it this way. I am very conservative. So I'm not a liberal at all.
But what sports into what adrenaline are you? Did you start are you into heart racing, or did you start doing extreme sports?
When I came back from Vietnam, I think I told you I was an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, but was that, some people call jumping, being airborne, an adrenaline kick, but if you do extreme sports, you go for for the long run?
Well, I came back. I got into skydiving. I got into mountain climbing. I used to be a long distance runner. I got into sailing, cross country skiing. Let's see what else. That was about it. But I was doing all those things up until a couple of years ago.
What would you say? I hope to talk to Vietnam veteran. Munich and Berlin has lots of Vietnamese businesses.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah. Would you criticize the VA?
No. The VA takes a lot of face punches unnecessarily. Now they've got some problems at some locations, but every organization, especially one as big as the VA, is going to have problems. The biggest problem that's happened to VA was we had a president named Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And when the VA was set up, the VA was set up to help any veteran with service-connected disabilities. You were a veteran and you had a service-connected disability, a disability that you got while you were on active duty, then the VA was supposed to take care of that. And it worked well for many years until little Slick Willie Clinton became president. And then he said, nope, VA, if they were a veteran, then they can come into the VA, regardless of where the disability came from, regardless of when they got sick. Every veteran now can use the VA. So suddenly, instead of servicing maybe 500,000 veterans, suddenly they're now servicing 2 million veterans. And they just didn't have the capacity or the funding to do that. And so for the next 8-10 years, the VA is getting beaten up because they don't have enough people or enough money to handle all the people that are coming in to see them now. And it's getting now better. They built more facilities and more locations, and they're getting the funding now because of the public outcry. But people forget they were originally to service just service-connected disabilities, and it's gone way out of proportion. Now you can go in there and say, I got a bad cold. They got to service you just like any other hospital. The VA that we have here in Tampa, it's excellent in my opinion. I've had surgery done there. I've had eyeglasses done there. I've done hearing there and the PTSD there. And so the service has been really good every time. Very nice facility. And they care about the veteran. St. Petersburg, same thing. Great facility over there. And we just had a clinic opened up here in our town. So no, the VA does a good job. They get some lousy press. The press in America is if they can find a cause to take up, regardless of how big a problem is, man, they're going to make it a big problem. I have no love for the press here in the United States.
Do you have? What's your news source to go to?
Say again.
What's your news source to go to? What news do you read or?
Well, Newsmax is, in my opinion, the better one. Fox used to be pretty good, but Fox has really made a lot of us angry here in the last month. So, but Newsmax, I'll go to Newsmax. One American News is excellent, but I don't get that here on our TV. But One American News is also excellent. MSNBC, CNN, in my opinion, those are terrible news organizations. We don't have, at one time, we used to have investigative journalists that would look into a situation and report the facts. And we had journalists like Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, Harry Reasoner. And these were very knowledgeable journalists. They would report the facts. Now you have a bunch of talking heads that just want to give you their opinion and no facts. And it's unfair.
It's the reporter and the journalist. Did you ever meet a German French foreign soldier in Vietnam?
No.
Did you
met a Chinese soldier that we captured him, but I never met a French, German, or British soldier in Vietnam.
What did you do with him? Was did he just hang out with you in the camp? What did you do with the Chinese soldier?
We put him in a POW camp.
And did you ever get captured?
No.
Were you in a field hospital?
Nope.
So then you must have been quite lucky because your helicopter dropped several times. Were you flying that low?
Yeah, I was lucky. The closest I'd come to getting shot was the heel on my boot was shot off. So that was the closest I'd come to getting hit. My helicopter was shot down 9 times, but everybody got out okay. I did have a door gunner wounded, but that was it.
But you're not your father.
No, he was good.
How are those ceremonies for a Silver Star?
Yeah, I got the Silver Star.
Yeah, but how did you get it?
We went into a landing zone in a combat assault, 6 aircraft. My wingman, a machine gun opened up on him and blew the engine cowling partially off the aircraft. So it was just hanging there. He couldn't take off with that just hanging there because it would fly up into the rotor blades. So I moved my aircraft in front of his, so the machine gun was shooting at us now. And that gave his crew chief a chance to get out and fix that cowling so he could get out of there. And it gave me the chance that both my gunners could engage the machine gun that was shooting at us.
And then you landed, and how long after when did you know that you get the Silver Cross for this?
It was about 4 or 5 months later.
And your whole company said then they wrote this down, or
somebody in the unit wrote it up and sent it in, and then it got approved, and the approval came back just as I left the unit. So I was back in the States when the award was given to me.
Did you find daily life? No. How often did you get post?
Get what?
How often did you write letters?
Every day.
And how often did you receive letters?
Oh, probably every other day. Because you had nothing to do except for drink and play cards. So a lot of times in the evening when you got back, you'd have a beer and you'd sit down and write a letter to your mother or your father or your girlfriend.
Mr. Jackson, I thank you now for the interview.
You're certainly welcome, Frank. It was good talking to you.
Yes, thank you, sir.